I think pretty soon I'm going to make that survey available to everyone who wants to see it, all the responses. But I want everyone to know that the most important thing to pretty much everyone is the election in November. So I'm hoping to give a lot of time to that. And also some of our grannies are on their way to Raleigh as we speak for a protest about the pipeline. And so I've asked some people to come and tell us what they're doing and see if we can do some action around that. And just before Randa starts singing, I just want to say my bias always is that if there is an action we can do, even if it seems small, I just want to keep us telling each other about these actions, because I think water wears away a rock, and we might just be little drops of water, but the rock is being worn away, as we saw from the decision to change the flag in Mississippi yesterday. So I'm gonna mute everyone. Randa, unmute yourself, but everybody sing.
The lyrics, you know them, but you know sometimes the order is a little funny. They're at the top of the chat. Woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Well, I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on justice. I woke up this morning with my mind, stayed on justice. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on justice. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Well, I'm walking and talking with my mind just stayed on justice. I'm walking and talking with my mind. Oh, stayed on justice. I'm walking and talking with my mind. Stayed on justice. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Well, I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind just stayed on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on freedom. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for being here. Welcome to Tuesdays with Tillis, week number 179. We are a community of nonviolent resistance, and we gather every day to learn, every week to learn from one another and figure out together how we can take action to move justice forward. And I think above all, to keep ourselves afloat during this difficult time. We offer each other.
You can see the top half of our face.
Support. Okay. So who's here for the first time? Anybody here for the first time?
Me. Evelyn.
Evelyn, welcome, welcome. You're Lori's friend. I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah.
Welcome. And I've been trying to subscribe her to the Tiny Letter for a couple weeks. I've learned something about the Tiny Letter, which is that sometimes you have to subscribe yourself. This happened recently with someone else, I can't remember who. So if you haven't been getting it, you can go to this link that's in the chat room and subscribe yourself, because it means that your email program thinks that it's spam. So it might be kicking it out.
Actually, Karen, I figured out that I was one of the people you were talking about who had a
Yes. Hi, Bessie.
It's been pushing it into the spam folder. And I don't know why. I don't know how to stop it, but that's where I go look now to find it.
Thank you. Thanks, Bessie. So I want to invite everyone to just take a couple of deep breaths and arrive in your body. Sometimes I feel so buffeted by the news cycle, and yet I feel like we have all kind of committed to paying attention to the news cycle, and that comes at a little bit of a price. And so I just want to invite everyone to look at each other. It really, I don't know about you, but it always helps me to look at everybody here in your little squares. And to feel your feet on the floor, and feel yourself supported by the earth. And, you know, we're going to be talking about police violence today and elections mostly, and also about this protest that some of the grannies are headed toward right now in Raleigh. And some of this is upsetting. So if we can just keep our attention on our bodies, so that we can keep grounding ourselves in the earth and in awareness, we're going to get through this. Kind of a tough week, I think. So I think I would really like to start with the most upsetting one to me right now, which is the police violence. It seems like every day there's another murder of an unarmed Black person. It seems like every day we see such upsetting videos about police charging into crowds. And so I want to just open up this discussion for the next several minutes for people to bring your thoughts and your ideas about actions we can take to support defunding the police, and also ideas you have around this whole idea of defunding the police. And remember to keep breathing.
This is Mark. I wonder if it's possible, so I'm kind of an analytical type of guy, right? So I wonder if it's possible to get a copy of the 911 calls. And it would be interesting to me to know just how many of those calls we really need someone to show up with a gun. How many of those calls are really like domestic issues? So a counselor should be showing up, or, there's, something other than an agent of the state, right? Someone with the police going up with a gun. Because I think a lot of circumstances, there's guns that just lead to just more problems. I don't know how to turn that into something factual.
Yeah, Elena.
Debating that with several groups, very feverishly, shall we say. This one group, Raleigh Demands Justice, had a Facebook event with the council, with some of the members of the council. And in that, they talk about homelessness and how we don't need to show up with an officer. And apparently this is the second time this has come up, and Marianne Baldwin is trying to deflect it and put, we're going to have counselors. We're talking to the chief on how she can employ counselors. And this, again, very young, amazing man Greer Webb says, hold up, we've already discussed this. So there's a movement, there's really a movement to And for folks who are like, oh, defund the police, what are you kidding? It's going to be anarchy. No, defunding the police means we are taking the buckets of money and putting them in more useful spots. So that's one point. Second point is there is such a strong movement. Now, again, I'm the one who thinks all politics are local, to change this in Raleigh, and hopefully, with enough pressure, we will prevail. So anybody who lives in Raleigh, call Mary Ann Baldwin's office.
I just want to say I agree with Mark and Elena. I don't think that defunding the police necessarily means getting rid of the police department. I don't think that should happen. I think the money should be moved to where it can be better utilized and applied to the particular situation at hand. My 2 cents.
Thank you. Thank you, Bessie.
Has anyone, sorry, was somebody else going to speak?
Susan and then Tony.
Has anyone carefully studied that the federal House bill that Karen Bass pushed through? And, there was a House bill and then a Senate bill. Has anyone studied those two bills? The Senate bill was, didn't.
Bullshit.
Yeah, right. But the House bill seems much stronger.
Yes.
I don't know how we can, since it's in the House, how do we pressure Tillis on that? But anyway, it just seems worth really studying that particular bill. I'll put a link to it from today, an article about it in the chat.
Good. Okay, Tony and then Darlene.
So last night over dinner, we were having a discussion about policing and the militarization of the police. And so here's some statistics I found from a University of Texas study. 6% of the U.S. population has had military experience, but 30% of police are military veterans.
Yeah.
You are more likely to be shot by a veteran, 190% more likely to be shot by a veteran than somebody who didn't have service. And if that veteran was deployed overseas, you are 2.9 or 290% more likely to be shot by that veteran, because that's the way they're conditioned. They have a weapon to kill. That's all I wanted to share.
Thank you, Tony. Jan put in the chat that Durham folks are talking this about as well. All of us who live in Durham need to join Durham Beyond Policing and follow them on social media. And Jan, I didn't know this. This is wonderful. She's on the Sheriff's Community Advisory Board and listening to how Burkhead is responding to community pressure. That's wonderful. Darlene, you're gonna have to unmute yourself.
There we go. I moved down here from Fairfax County, Virginia, and they have a really amazing program, a mobile crisis unit that works very closely with the police. And they do a lot of, working together with them when they get these calls. And I don't know if we have similar type groups down here in Raleigh and Durham, but I think it helps to de-escalate a lot of things when they take a mental health professional out with them. And I was also going to say about the bill that from the House, Tillis can't do anything about that. We can't do anything about it unless we get rid of Mitch McConnell.
Let's get rid of Mitch McConnell. So I think all of us can look into what's happening in wherever it is that we're living, because I know that Raleigh people are going to have to pressure Raleigh officials, and Durham people are going to have to pressure Durham officials. I love, Jan, that you're on that commission, and maybe all of us can try to dig a little deeper Mark, I think that there are people who have done the work that you're talking about. I just don't know who they are. And there's a podcast that Chris Hayes does every week called Why Is This Happening, which is really wonderful. And last week he talked to someone who's an expert in defunding the police. And I think following that thread might get you. I would love to see that as well. I would love to see that. Because sometimes I've seen as low as 5% of the calls that are 911 need an officer with a gun who's combat trained. So, yeah. And if you find out, bring it next week. Yeah. Yeah, Randa.
When I was growing up in New Hampshire, the paper, the Manchester Union Leader, was the local paper, which was really a yellow journalism. But one thing that they did as a local paper is they published a police report of exactly what happened and who, of course, was involved. Now, I realize we're in a new world and we're in a new, you can't really do that anymore. But I wonder if there's something like that that could be in the press, whatever press that we would talk about, showing people how many calls were domestic violence, or is this too invasive? I'm just talking off the top of my head here, but it's a way of the public seeing those who actually have access to, but I mean, I'm talking about print and, online. Is that anything worth pursuing?
I think what we need, but I think we need to pursue these groups that have been working on this for a long time, the defund the police, because they are collecting that kind of information. And if we can support those police, those efforts, then we can help push this forward. The thing about local journalism is that it's dying, it's collapsing. So I don't know, other than getting a subscription to our local paper, I don't know if putting a lot of energy into the local paper is a good idea. It's just
but I think as long as it can get posted in social media somewhere, that exposes it, right? So I think that's kind of the direction where Rhonda was going. Correct me if I'm wrong, but getting it published, quote unquote, in today's lingo, really is getting it out of social media so people can see what's going on.
That's really true. And anyone who's on Facebook, I really urge you to go to my Facebook page, because in the last few days I've been posting what happened in Aurora, Colorado, and also what happened during Gay Pride in New York. They're very upsetting videos of police assaulting people. And I think that in the civil rights movement, this is what really moved the country forward, was people seeing these kinds of videos. And I can't watch people get murdered anymore, or even listen to it. But watching an entire group of people getting brutalized by the police doesn't seem to be quite as big an assault on my senses. Yeah, Julie.
This morning I listened to Clearing the Fog, a podcast by Popular Resistance. And the first half of the program was about media bias and how we have to democratize media and take away their monopoly. So the social media is very important in terms of democratizing the media. So that's all.
I'm sorry, Julie, I was writing that down and I missed what you said. So use social media or don't use social media?
Oh, yes. This morning on Clearing the Fog, they spoke about social media and taking away the monopoly. And we have to be the citizens' media.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Exactly what Mark said. Thank you so much.
I posted a Vice article about some cities that have taken it out of the police hands and social services has stepped in, because I really think that's also important. I don't think that those social workers or psychologists should be under the police purview. I think it should, just like you have a coordinated effort when EMTs show up, police show up, and fire show up, there's a way to do this, and it does not have to be under the police.
Okay, great.
So I did an article.
Great, okay. I'm thinking that we should go on to the pipeline protest unless anyone has something else urgent to say on this subject. action we can take around defunding the police. Can you all let me know?
Oh, can I just say one quick thing? If you're not familiar with the podcast, The Oath with Chuck Rosenberg, he interviews Maya Wiley on one of the most recent podcasts, and she talks about community policing in New York and her background in history. It's fabulous. On The Oath is the podcast.
And who does that podcast again?
Chuck Rosenberg.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, who I love. He's fabulous. He's, interviews a lot of people in law enforcement and former prosecutors and everything else. But one of the most recent ones was with Maya Wiley, who's, frequently a guest on MSNBC. So it really fits this conversation.
Okay, that's great. I put that in the chat too. That's great. That's great. Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
I just posted, it was breaking news on WRAL to the bill that Lana was talking about. Top lawmakers say NCGA will revisit and correct bill that would limit the access to death investigation records. So I posted a link to it.
Great. Thanks so much. Thanks so much. So let's talk about the pipeline, because we have several members, grannies, who are in Raleigh. People who understand what the issue is and how we can take action, please speak up.
I'll tell you a little bit of what I know.
Karen, I was hoping that Karen Bearden would jump in. This is Dave Anderson.
Karen would be.
I haven't been paying a whole great a lot of attention about this, but basically one of the permits for the ACP, the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, is expiring in October of this year, and they are requesting FERC an extension of 2 years, and people are trying to organize against that and put any pressure they can on either FERC and or Governor Cooper or the Environmental Justice Council that Secretary Reagan is a member of. So there's a number of modes of trying to put pressure.
So what is FERC? What is FERC?
FERC is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. So it's a U.S. governmental body.
But it's the state that offers the permit, and it's about to expire, so we need to pressure the state not to renew the pipeline. Go ahead.
No, I think it is FERC. It's a FERC permit that's expiring. But there are also state permits that have been issued as well that the governor and or the secretary can put pressure on. There's also a letter that can be sent to state legislatures that people are circulating. So there's 3 or 4 different actions all addressing this issue.
Okay, Karen, and then Jade.
I was going to say there is a deadline to get the comment into FERC, which is July 2nd, 5 p.m. So you got to get on it. The little environmental bulletin that the Tuesdays with Tillis Climate Crisis Group puts out had information in it this week, the last one you got, on how to do that. And Pricey Harrison, who was one of the legislators, has a letter that she is seeking co-signers from the legislature. Very well written letter. It looks to me like it was written by one of the environmental groups. And so she has all the arguments. Excellent letter. And everybody needs to try and get their legislator, the state legislators, to sign on to that. She's sending it not only to FERC, but I think also to the governor to see that they gird their loins on this issue.
And Karen, did that email come? That came to about 70 something of us from who? From you or from David Anderson?
I sent it this time.
Okay, so Karen Malum, you can search Karen Malum in your email. I know we all get hundreds of emails a day, so that's how we find it. Great. Jay, did you want to add anything about this?
I just wanted to say that there's a group of people at the Department of Environmental Quality down on Jones Street today at noon who are protesting outside the DEQ because the hearing is going on inside the building. There's also a Zoom call at noon, which I'm going to join. You can join that and be a participant and an observer of what's going on inside the building at 12.
Jade, can you put the link to that Zoom call in the chat box?
Yeah, I'll try to find it.
Want to hop onto it after this?
Okay.
Great. This is great. Susan, you have your hand up and you're just putting something in the chat. Do you want to talk about this? Susan?
Yeah, that's old.
Oh, okay.
Take it down.
Okay, thanks. Okay, this is great. Thank you so much. It can seem a little overwhelming, but I think I understand it now. And I thought that we just had until yesterday, but we have until the 2nd of July. Yeah, the Atlantic Coast Pipeline, which we certainly don't need and is destroying a lot of land. Is it okay if we move on to the election? Is that okay with people?
Yes.
Okay. So, you know, I didn't know that Pam has been on the phone. I said, Pam, we've missed you, but then she's been here every Tuesday and I didn't know. So I think she's with us. Are you here, Pam, on the phone?
Well, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
All
and
right.
Jeff opened this subject because he went to training very recently with You Can Vote. Many of us have been to this training, but I, for one, have not done it lately. He did it this week, and I know Pam is right up on this stuff. So,
well, not so terribly up on it, but what I will say is I had in the chat last week, You Can Vote has a monthly meeting that is open to everyone. And it was last Thursday. It's the last Thursday of each month, and it is up to the second election information. So I highly recommend that even if you are not a volunteer with You Can Vote, that you listen in on those calls. I mean, it's like a webinar, so it's not something that you get to participate in. It's just listening.
And thank you for that. And if we could get a link to You Can Vote in the chat, that would be wonderful. Jeff went to the one on Thursday, and I asked him to kind of sum up some of it and also to take our questions. Is that okay with everyone? This seems to be at the top of everyone's list, and a lot of things keep changing. So, Jeff, take it away.
Well, yes, I did go to the webinar. I did see the webinar last Thursday, and it's they have one every final Thursday of the month. And I'm not sure if you have to, I'm a little unclear from what Pam said, if you have to be a volunteer or not already to get into that. That's something that's not clear to me. But as Pam said, it's an incredibly thorough bit of information on their site. And one of the things that you can always count on with them is that they are up to the minute, as Pam said, and they have very, very thorough information and thorough ways to get the information. They're focusing on, historically, they've been focusing on registering people to vote. Well, that's kind of up in the air now, just like everything else is. And they've been focusing now on figuring out how to do all of this, not on the streets, as we can't be on the streets. And so they're doing a lot of stuff online. They've got a lot of young people involved. They're focusing on I guess 3 different areas. I mean, one thing they're doing is they're in touch with and doing things with organizations, faith and community leaders, non-for-profits to kind of get those people involved and having contact with their people to register to vote. They've got a whole lot of information on registering to vote online, which they're trying to get out to the community. They're involved with food pantries, and they're putting information about that in the bags that people take. They're also, like I said, have a lot of young people involved, and they've started doing stuff with texting. on their site, they have a spot where you can indicate that you're going to vote, and they're collecting that data. And they've had that on the site for a while. So they've got about 200 people doing that, voting to saying they're going to vote. But recently, they had these young people that they have text people, and they, like in one day, had 1,000 people go to the site to say that they would vote this time. And of course, that's a way for them to gather data. The other thing that they're going to be doing, one of the things that's been disappointing, is that as a volunteer, we have not been able to do very much with this group day to day or week to week. But starting in July, at the end of July, they're going to be having a voter contact with cell phones and with phones, and that's where the volunteers will start to be able to be more active again. I mean, and then starting in October, they're going to have a big go to get out the vote online. But I think the important thing to me is that if we're going to get involved with voting and encouraging voting in November, this is probably one of the best groups to do it with, because they're on top of things. They're very tech savvy. They're very data driven. And so they know what they're doing. One of the things that's been impressive is that they look at their success rate, both in 2016 and 2018. The people that they've registered to vote voted at a higher clip than the rest of the population of North Carolina by about 10%, which is quite a difference. And so they seem to be a fairly successful group. And if you won that, I would encourage people to get involved with. I mean, one of the things that's a problem now, we're all kind of going, there's all these things that are going on, and we're kind of overwhelmed by all of it. But I think a lot of us are feeling like it's hard to do something because we're not out on the streets. We're not able to be out there doing too much. And it's one thing to use our checkbooks to support groups. It's another thing to actually be doing more. And I think that this group would allow us to do things starting in July that will actually have an impact.
Thank you. Thank you. And I really thank you, Jeff, for sending that link, because I was able to watch this most recent iteration, and it answered some questions for me. Definitively, we can say now that absentee ballots, you only need one witness.
Right.
You only need one witness. So tell people that, because that's a recent change.
That is a recent change, and it's really helpful because also on their site they list not only who can be a witness, whoever's in the household can be a witness, but also there are ways to have assistance with the balloting, actually, if it's a spouse, if it's a child, so you can get assistance if they're actual family members. You can vote, can't help people fill out forms, but you can have close relatives do it for you or with you. So that's, but you're right, they have their information on their site is remarkable in terms of being complete and easy to understand.
Yeah. Some of it we've discussed before, and I also just want to say again that if you get an absentee ballot, you do not necessarily have to use it.
Right. Right.
And that's really important to clear up. You could send for an absentee ballot and decide to vote. But one thing that they also talked about that I've been feeling for a long time is absentee ballots are not the best option for everyone. It is a little complicated. You do have to send for the ballot and then get the ballot and mail in the ballot. And also, a lot of people are suspicious about what will happen with these absentee ballots, especially with the crashing of the post office, the Postal Service, and the president's and GOP's refusal to fund it properly for this reason, apparently. So early voting is, I think, maybe the best thing to stress for people, because people can register at the same time and social distance more easily. Yeah, Mark.
And along those lines, I participated in the Wake County Board of Elections meeting, and I would encourage you each to get engaged with your local county Board of Elections. I was on the meeting, I think it was last week, where they were deciding where the early voting sites would be in Wake County. Lake County funded 20 early voting sites, and the Board of Elections has 2 Republicans and 3 Democrats. And 2 Republicans were trying to prevent NC State having an early voting site. Unfortunately, the 3 Republicans overruled that pretty quickly. But that's a type of nonsense that's going on at that local level that we need to be shining light on and making sure that we're making voices heard. So I agree with you, Jeff. I think getting involved with some large organization is going to be really important, but I think we can do something within our own counties that we need to be focusing on too.
I agree. Actually, another point that came to mind with what Karen said, in terms of what's the best way for everybody to vote. You Can Vote actually has something out there that helps you, a decision tree that helps you decide what's going to be the best way for you to do it. So I think, again, it's another example of how You Can Vote really is on top of things. And they know a lot. They have a lot of information.
This is Pam again. I'd just like to encourage everybody to go to youcanvote.org, go in and out of every section, honestly, of the website. But the voter information is spectacular, as well as the links will send you straight to the Board of Elections. And then the other thing too, and I think someone said last week that you would be able to go to the voter lookup, where you can look to be sure that you're active and all of that, and see your absentee request, which in the past you could, but they have said, everybody at You Can Vote says that will not show this time around. So When you look where it says absentee request, it's going to keep saying 0. I requested mine over a month and a half ago, and of course I kept looking at it. And then, of course, since then, though, You Can Vote has said, that's not going to be updated.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's right. And also, Galia made the point in the chat that, if you send for an absentee ballot, there's nothing that doesn't prevent you from voting later. There's kind of no downside to that, to do that. Cliff, you want to tell us about the article you put in the chat?
All right. I was just trying to fix the link that I just put in because I didn't. I'm in the middle of trying to describe it. But essentially, there was an article in the Atlantic that I came upon that talked about the looming link or threat to in-person voting. From my perspective, we basically need to expand both avenues for voting and let people make the best decision given their situation. And this article that I put a link to in the Atlantic is a good primer on exactly what is being thrown up in terms of obstacles in person voting. So I'm going to try to annotate that in just a moment. Thank you.
And that kind of strengthens the argument that we might as well all send for absentee ballots. So, yeah. Okay. Thanks so much. Yeah. Maggie.
I put in the chat about voteforward.com. I've done this before. They send you names of people who have not voted. They're mostly Democrats. They're registered in various congressional districts. You can pick how many you want, 5, 20, 50. They send you the names from a particular district and how to write the letters. And then you keep them and don't send them until October the 20th or something like that. But it's wonderful if you can't do anything else. You can write these letters. I did it in 2018, and they've got it going for now.
Yes, I did that too. It's great. Thank you. Very good idea. And we had volunteers who are sending out 2,000 postcards that were donated by an indivisible chapter in Connecticut, also aimed at getting toward out the vote for strategic people. I wanted to say one more thing that before I forget, which is that You Can Vote said that voter registrations are down, and we all need to hear that, because the usual ways of going to music festivals and shopping centers and registering people at a table, which we've all done before for You Can Vote, we can't do that now. So voter registrations are down. So they have made registering to vote online. It is a two-step process, but they've made it really easy. So continuing to, through social media or anyone that we see are in touch with, registering people to vote remains really important.
Karen?
Yes.
To the point of the previous, to Maggie, what she was talking about, the voteforward.org. In our neighborhood, we had an event where about 30 people gathered, and I don't remember the last count, we had 500 letters that went out in 2018. And I think the thing that is really fabulous about that organization is they target voters who are registered Democrats but not likely to vote. And the letter, it's designed so that it arrives to them about 3 days before the election or whenever. They tell you when to send the letters. And so we hope that of those 500, I think that's Tom Steyer's thing, but we hope of that 500, that if 10% of those reach people, that's a good thing, cause them to vote, I mean.
Okay, that's great. So that's again, Vote Forward, right, that you're talking about. Wonderful. That's wonderful. Anything else urgent about the mechanics of the election?
Yeah, Jan put in Jan put in a chat point.
Go ahead, Jan.
I just wanted to say that a pressure point that we should probably pay some attention to is that we have such terrible unemployment laws in North Carolina that we should make sure that people who apply for temporary poll work jobs, of which there aren't enough poll workers, especially younger ones, that they don't lose unemployment benefits because they took this temporary job, which is happening, I think, in some places. So it's just something else to pay attention to, another potential voter suppression. And because a lot of these states that have reduced the number of polling places say they do it because they don't have enough poll workers.
That's a really good point. Yeah, Doyle.
Yeah, a concern I have has to do with tabulation of voting, particularly with the absentee voting. It would be wonderful if some of that tabulation could take place before voting day, but I'm afraid it's going to follow. And that raises the specter of people claiming victory early on in the process, what comes over the television, and then alleging fraud, if they don't end up winning. And so I just think it's really, really very fraught. And I think too little attention has been paid to that issue.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead, Susan.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yesterday, I was on a call with Max Rose and Katie Porter, and Katie Porter has a voting effort. And she actually spoke about that tabulation issue. With all of this mythology that, mail-in voting is a bad thing, that she suggested that people approach the mail-in with the idea that some elections will not be called right away because there is such careful, and I don't know if this is state to state or whatever, but by the Board of Elections, there's such careful checking and rechecking, which is why voter fraud is not as big as they make it out to be, Trump. And I had something else, but I just wanted to say that about the tabulation piece.
Great. Okay, great. Yeah, Julie.
Also, just in follow up to what Susan just said, they, from my experience, has been that they are very careful, and I hope I'm not repeating myself on this, but in 1 year, I actually received a phone call from the Board of Elections in New York explaining to me why I didn't get my ballot, and it's because it had arrived, my request had arrived a day late. So I was impressed that they took the time to call me to tell me, why. So, and since then I've been looking online a lot to see how detailed the information is. So I've had good experience with absentee voting, and they tend to, my experience has been that they're very careful with it.
Okay. We're going to transition a little bit. We do have a little time left, but I asked if Randa might be willing to sing us just a little tiny song, because sometimes I think it's good for us to just settle our bodies and take a few deep breaths and take some stuff in, and also listen within ourselves about, is there anything else that we need to talk about today?
So I've sung this before. Well, we've got grief and we got fear. Still we are all seeking shelter here. And we will uprise out of the valley, trying to get home. We find our strength and we share our pride. Nobody can steal what lives inside. Now we will uprise out of the valley, trying to get home.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Michael Eisenberg, you had your hand up. I'm sorry, I didn't see.
Oh, that's okay. Something that I heard yesterday that's gotten very, very little play, but it's very disturbing. If we remember when Dodd-Frank came through and after Obama took over and they passed the banking reform, where Volcker, more or less, the Volcker rule more or less reestablished Glass-Steagall to not be able to commingle customer funds with proprietary funds. And also they instituted a certain amount of reserves that the banks had to carry on their books in case the shit hit the fan again, that they would not be bailed out again by the citizens of the United States. And the Trump administration has been pushing very strongly to get rid of these restrictions and regulations. And yesterday, the Federal Reserve, they need, I think, 5 regulatory administrations to agree to this. Yesterday, the FDIC and the Federal Reserve agreed to remove those restrictions. So this is something we need to have on our radar. If this happens, we could see another massive crash. And I personally I didn't want to bail out the banks then. I certainly don't want to bail them out again. So we need to start doing some research on this and start to call our representatives, especially the Democrats. We need them, whoever has Democratic representation, like David Price and the 2 other representatives, who can actually speak to this so we can get the word out. It's a very disturbing thing happening.
Yeah, that sounds really important. If you can lay your hand on something for us to read about it, and either put it in the chat or send it to Jewel sometime today, she can include it with the chat.
Send it to you so you can put it in the tiny letter?
You can do that too. Sure.
Send it to both. That way it go out to everybody that wasn't here as well.
Sure.
Okay.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much.
Yep.
Susan.
Yes, in terms of other things that are on my heart. Something Herb put in the chat early in the meeting is about these bounties.
Yes.
I can't. Yeah. So we called Tillis this morning, and about this, and he's looking into it. So there is nothing that will separate Tillis from this president. Not even this treachery.
Yeah.
Nothing. I mean, here we are between Juneteenth and, the celebration on July 4th, and the president is just the ultimate traitor to our country.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, and then sends out that tweet.
Which tweet?
I hesitate to even say the words, white power tweet that he sent out. And he said he was staying in DC and he was on his golf cart and didn't have his phone turned on. They couldn't reach him. The president? Nobody could reach the president to tell him that was a terrible tweet. What in the world? So I'm sorry. Gerald Givens, our friend of Tuesdays with Tillis, who served in the Air Force, president of, Raleigh NAACP, he said, I want answers.
Yeah.
And so whatever we do, I feel like this is something we could keep pressing Tillis on or whatever, letter to the editor, but echo Gerald, we want answers. This is not acceptable.
I think this is really true, that we really have to push Tillis and Burr on this. This is just totally insane that the GOP is letting this go on and these senators are silent. And, I got so tired of calling them, but I'm going to start calling them again about this. But also all of us who are on social media, Facebook and Twitter, Burr and Tillis are on these things, and so, of course, is Trump. And we can use Twitter and Facebook to call attention to their treasonous responses to this. Before we go back to talking a little bit more about Russia, I just want to go back to what Susan said about the tweet. The tweet that the president retweeted, there was also a second one that he retweeted, which was this white, very wealthy couple coming out of their house, and both of them aiming her pistol, him a rifle, at peaceful Black Lives Matter protesters who were walking past them. He retweeted the story of that and the picture of them. So, this is way beyond dog whistles now. So that's the other thing that I think we need to keep pressing Tillis on. And, I get on his Facebook page all the time, and so do other people. And one of the things that does, I think, is canvass some of the people that are still thinking that he makes any sense. Anyway, whatever ways that we can put out how insane this is without losing our own sanity is good. Yeah, Bessie.
On the issue of just talking about things that are on the agenda, I just want to give kudos to Justice Robinson about the Louisiana verdict, I guess, that was handed down yesterday or the day before. I can't remember exactly when it was now. We didn't get what we wanted. The people who were the defenders didn't get what they want, or the plaintiffs didn't get everything that they wanted, but we take what we can get. And to me, it just demonstrates that there is somebody in the high court who is not afraid to stand up to what Trump wants, or Chump wants, as I call him, and do what's right. Maybe it was only for his rejection that they were insulting his own intelligence that he did what he did. But whatever the reason, he did what he did, and it was good for us. So kudos to him.
Thank you so much, Bessie. Thank you. Scarlett.
Yeah, but Robert said
that the reason he voted the way he did was because he was following a precedent that he didn't agree with, but he follows that. Kavanaugh went against everything he said in the hearings. And so I am still most concerned about what's going to happen. And perhaps Galia could speak to that.
So if you mean the anti-abortion case, is that what you mean, Bessie?
Yes, the Louisiana. Yeah, he did make it clear that he voted the way he did for Louisiana because just months ago or a year ago, so whenever it was, they voted for Texas. So he was following precedent,
right? Which is his job.
Yeah, he was doing what he's supposed to do, right?
Right. He was doing what he was supposed to do. They shouldn't have even taken up this case because it was just decided in 2016 when they did put that through in 2016. In a year, it closed like 20 out of 40 of the abortion clinics in Texas in 2016. And then it was ruled unconstitutional, which it is. And then Louisiana put their law into place fully knowing it was unconstitutional because they wanted to take it to a new court. And thank goodness that Roberts did the right thing. And it wasn't because, it's never clear what Roberts going to do these days, but they should all go on precedent, all of them. It should have been unanimous. I mean, it was almost exactly the same case. And there was another thing about that, because not only was the law that Louisiana put in place the same as what Texas did, but Louisiana asked that the court add another statement saying that doctors couldn't do lawsuits on behalf of patients. Now, what patients are going to have the money and the means and the knowledge to pursue a Supreme Court case? Doctors can do it with help, and doctors have been representing patients in these cases for decades, since at least 1973. So, I mean, it is absolutely huge that Roberts voted the right way. It is appalling that they all didn't vote the right way. And thank goodness thank goodness, because really, even I talked to Ellie Smeal, and even Ellie Smeal was worried about this case. So it's such a big deal.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to have to stop this discussion because we're coming to the end of time. And we have a closing song and we have closing words. But if you don't get the chat list from Jewel, thank you so much, Jewel, for doing that. That's such a labor of love. There's a lot of stuff in the chat today. So keep breathing and keep pushing all these elected officials to do the right thing. Water wears away a rock.
Unmute. Okay, here we go. Michael couldn't be with us today, so it's me on the end here. And this is same old, but, some things are still true, even though they were been sung about 50 times or, 179. Here we go. If you don't like who's in there, vote them out. That's what election day is all about. The superpower we've got is called the ballot box. And if you don't like who's in there, vote them out. Oh, vote them out. Whoa, vote them out. And when they're gone, we'll sing and dance and shout. Woo, we will. We'll bring some great ones in. They will find us hope again. And if you don't like who's in there, vote them out. Now, 2020 never mattered quite like this. Oh, the Senate is a swamp that serves the rich. Let's Let's end the graft and lies. Get that White House sanitized. That nasty virus must be voted out. Here we go. Vote 'em out. Well, vote 'em out. And when they're gone, we'll sing and dance and shout. We'll bring some great ones in, and they'll find us hope again. And if you don't like who's in there, vote 'em out. Now, we're in the streets and we are holding strong. Putin and Trump have been boyfriends much too long. Let's end deceit and fraud, restore the rule of law. Lift up our cries of truth and vote 'em out. Here we go. Vote 'em out. Vote 'em out. Vote 'em out. Vote 'em out. And when they're gone, we'll sing and dance and shout. Twist and shout. We'll bring some great ones in. They will find us hope again. And if you don't like who's in there, vote 'em out. I said, if you don't like who's in there, vote 'em out. Oh, yeah.
Yay. Thank you, Randa. Wow, we needed that. What a meeting. Wow, we covered a lot. Thank you, Karen. Thank you for everyone who spoke and shared and posted links. It's just this is what keeps us going. This is patriotism. It's relentless. It's unceasing patriotism of human flourishing, of the earth and the land, the sea, the air. It's showing up for one another. So thank you all. And I want to just take a breath and let it sink in. And remember, as Karen has been saying, water wears away a rock. And this work together is what it takes to erode the forces of death and destruction and corruption and treachery that we have spoken of today. This is what it takes. It is hard work to be a patriot. It is hard work. You see, and it takes a long time. It can take a long time. You know, that Mississippi flag was up since 1894. It just came down this week, that state flag. And now there's a commission that's going to design a new flag. And that's what this work is about. It's about taking down the old forces of oppression and building up a new vision of what this country can stand for. It's like this, you know, that poem by Langston Hughes about America. America has never been and yet will be. That's the America we're working on right here. And yet will be. A great, strong land of love. So the patriotic thing to do this week is to do something that supports the flourishing of all life. So go be a patriot. Be a patriot in all the best ways.
Thank you so much. Let's unmute ourselves so we can hear Scarlett and chant with her.
Resistance wears down resistance.
Amen.
All right. Forward together.
Not one step back.
Forward together.
Not one step back.
Forward together.
Not one step back.
Hi, Jesse.
Hey. Hello there. Bess.
Hi, Bessie. Hey, Bessie.
Aunt B.
Hi, Aunt. I don't know where she is. Hi, Aunt B.
Oh.
There you are.
See you guys later.
Good to see you, Julie.
Thank
We'll
you
see
so
everybody.
much. That was beautiful.
Yes.
Oh, yes, we'll see everybody later.
Yep.
Bye.
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 If you don't get the chat, it's because I don't have your email.
Good.
So
Good.
put your email in the chat and you'll get the transcript.
That's